My name is Pamela, and this is the story of how I lost everything I thought I was building. It's not easy to share, but I need to write it down to make sense of it, maybe to forgive myself, maybe to warn someone else before they fall into the same trap I did. I wasn't new to the internet, but I was new to crypto. And I wasn't stupid, just tired, isolated, and vulnerable in all the ways that matter. At the time, I was juggling 2 part-time jobs and counting down the weeks until I would become a mother. I lived in a small apartment just outside the city, the kind where every sound echoed a little too loudly when you were alone. My partner had left months earlier, and I had learned to stop hoping he would come back. I had read somewhere that crypto was the future, that it offered freedom, decentralization, a chance to level the playing field. I didn't expect to get rich overnight. I just thought maybe I could earn enough to feel a little more secure, a little less scared. I watched hours of YouTube videos about blockchain and wallet safety. I opened an account on a Solana wallet app and bought a small amount of Sol. It felt empowering, like I had taken the first step into something promising. But what nobody tells you is that in the crypto world, the platforms are just tools. The real danger lives where people gather to talk, especially when you're alone. It started with a Telegram group. I had joined a public chat room for a new Solana-based token. The group was buzzing with excitement. People were sharing charts, tips, news, and predictions. Most of it flew over my head, but no one made me feel stupid for asking questions. The admins welcomed me. One person even tagged me in a message and said they were glad I was there. I hadn't felt that kind of inclusion in a long time. In those early days, I was just absorbing everything. I asked about staking. I asked about DEXs and ENFs. I learned the difference between a hot wallet and a cold one. I even made a few small trades. Nothing major, just enough to keep my curiosity going. Then he messaged me. I won't use his real name, not because he deserves protection, but because I can't stomach seeing it again. He had a calm profile photo, something generic and forgettable. He told me he liked the questions I was asking in the group and that he was impressed I was learning so quickly. I didn't think much of it at the time. I thanked him, and we started chatting. Our messages moved from crypto talk to life talk. He told me about where he lived, about his job, his family. He seemed funny and kind. We exchanged memes. He sent photos, nothing inappropriate, just casual shots of his view from a hike, a pet dog, even a snapshot of his dinner. Looking back, I know those photos could have been pulled from anywhere, but in the moment, they felt real. He felt real. I told him I was expecting. I hadn't told many people, but he had asked how I was doing and I let it slip. He congratulated me, said I was strong, that the child would be lucky to have me. That night, I stared at the ceiling for hours, replaying the way his words made me feel, like I wasn't alone, like someone saw me. Over the next few weeks, our messages became more frequent. He never asked anything of me. He just listened, encouraged, and sometimes even made me laugh. He sent screenshots of trades he was making, profits he had earned using a special tool he called a wallet tracker. I didn't pay much attention at first. I was still cautious, but the numbers looked good, and more importantly, I trusted him. I wish I could say there was a single moment when I knew I was being played. A red flag I could point to and say, there, that was the lie. But there wasn't. It was slow, deliberate, and kind. It felt like an old friend I hadn't realized I needed. That's the trick about trust. It doesn't feel like a leap. It feels like sinking into something warm. He told me about a trading bot, a program that could analyze smart money wallets, essentially track the big players and mirror their moves. He said it helped him recover from a market crash the year before. He said it was the only reason he was still ahead. I didn't ask for it. He offered to help, said he'd walk me through it, that I didn't even need to spend much, just a starter amount to activate the tool. I told myself I wouldn't do it. I had read about scams. I knew better. But then one of the tokens I had bought in the Telegram group tanked hard. I watched my small gains disappear overnight. Panic crept in. I started thinking about diapers, hospital bills, baby clothes. I started thinking that maybe the spot could be my second chance. So I asked him to show me how it worked. He walked me through it step by step, told me where to send the funds, said once the BA was activated, I would receive a confirmation link to connect my wallet and start seeing trades. It sounded polished. He even showed me a mock interface, just a screenshot, but I believed it. I sent the SOL to the address he provided. I waited. Nothing came. I sent a message asking if I had done it right. It was marked as seen but went unanswered. A few hours later, I tried again. Still nothing. Then I checked the Telegram group and saw that his account had been deleted. Just gone, like he had never existed. My stomach dropped. My fingers went cold. I stared at the transaction on SolScan, watching the confirmation status blink at me like it was mocking me. I had sent $6,000 worth of SOL to a ghost. Everything unraveled after that. I barely slept. I deleted the Telegram app from my phone, reinstalled it, checked again. Nothing. The address was still there on the blockchain, mocking me with its finality. That money had taken me months to save. It was meant to be a cushion for emergencies, for the baby, for the kind of future I thought I could shape on my own. Now it was gone. And there was no one to blame but myself. I couldn't tell anyone. Not my sister, not my landlord, not even the nurse who called to check in on my prenatal vitamins. I buried it inside. I told myself it wasn't real, but it was. Worse than the money was the silence that followed, the quiet betrayal, the echo of every message I had sent him, every photo he had shared. I began to question everything. Had he always planned it? Was every word, every meme, every kind phrase a part of the setup? I wanted to believe it wasn't. I needed to believe that at some point, some part of it had been real, but deep down, I knew. The days that followed felt like a fog that never lifted. I moved through them the way someone moves through smoke, coughing, confused, unsure where to step next. My body was still growing, the baby still developing inside me, but it felt like everything else had frozen. Time stopped mattering. The clock ticked, but I barely noticed. Every time I opened my phone, my heart jumped. I kept expecting to see his name pop back up, like maybe he would apologize, explain, return what he stole. I refreshed my wallet app a dozen times a day even though I knew nothing would change. I watched the balance sit at zero like a wound. That refused to close. The shame was worst in the mornings. I would wake with a burst of energy, a fleeting sense that things were okay, that today would be normal. Then the memory would hit me like a wave. The messages, the transfer, the silence. I couldn't escape it. It clung to everything. Every email from my bank felt like a warning. Every Telegram notification made my stomach turn. I changed my number, deleted apps, and still I felt exposed. I stopped responding to friends. Most had already drifted during my pregnancy anyway, and I didn't have the strength to pretend I was okay. My sister texted me every few days, but I never answered. I told myself I was protecting her, but the truth was simpler. I didn't want to say out loud what I had done. I didn't want to see the disappointment on anyone's face, not even hers. I avoided mirrors too. I couldn't bear to see what I had become. Tired eyes, dry skin, a face that once held ambition now hollowed by regret. I had tried to do something brave, something that might give my baby a better future. And I had failed. For a while, I convinced myself that was the end of it. I had been tricked, yes, but I could move on. The worst had happened, and now I just needed to survive the consequences. It was painful, but manageable. At least, that's what I told myself. But then, weeks later, the messages started again. The first came through an anonymous email address I didn't recognize. It had no subject line. The body of the message was just 3 words. I know you. I deleted it, thinking it was spam. My heart raced, but I tried to brush it off. It could have been random, coincidence, nothing more. The next day, another email arrived. This time, it included a screenshot one of our old Telegram conversations. My name, my profile photo, my words, a conversation I barely remembered, taken completely out of context. Panic gripped me like a vice. I couldn't breathe. My mouth went dry. I stared at the screen, trying to understand what was happening. Then a third message came. A new address, different tone. This one contained a photo one I had sent during those early chats. Just a simple picture of my living room, meant to show I had finally gotten a new bookshelf. But now, staring at it again, I saw the details I had missed before. The mail on the table with my address partially visible. The reflection in the window. The vulnerability in it. The message below the photo was clear.do exactly as I say, or everyone sees this. I felt my legs give out. I sank to the floor, holding my belly as if I could shield the baby from whatever was happening. This wasn't just a scam anymore. This was something darker, something colder. I didn't know what he wanted. The next few messages were vague. He hinted that he had access to more, that he knew where I lived, that he could post everything, my identity, my photos, even fake conversations on social media. He said he could ruin me. There were no demands at first, just the threat, the power play. The silence that followed each message was worse than the message itself. I never knew when the next one would come. I started checking the locks on my door 5, 6, 7 times a night. I barely slept. Every noise outside felt like someone coming for me. I tried to trace the emails. I searched forums, asked anonymous questions, even considered hiring someone. But everything came up empty. Whoever he was, he knew how to hide. He had done this before. I considered going to the police, but what could I say? That I trusted a stranger online? That I sent him thousands of dollars in crypto and now he was threatening me with old screenshots. I could already hear the skepticism in their voices. No physical threats, no financial demands, just a slow, invisible pressure. That poisoned every part of my day. Still, I refused to answer him. I told myself that giving in would only make it worse. If he was bluffing, I couldn't show weakness. If he was serious, I couldn't give him anything to hold on to. But silence didn't stop him. One day, he sent me a list, a document with names, emails, and phone numbers, people from my past, co-workers, friends, even my sister. He said he had written messages ready for all of them, that he could tell them anything he wanted, and they would believe him. That was the moment I cracked. I stayed up all night writing a confession. Not to him, to myself. I laid everything bare in a document I never intended to send. Every mistake, every emotion, every thread of the story that had led me here. It wasn't about fixing anything. It was about reclaiming my voice. If he was going to destroy me, he would have to do it over my truth. I didn't send it anywhere. I didn't even save it, but writing it helped. It reminded me that I still had something he didn't, my ability to feel, to grieve, to hope. He could take my money. He could try to take my peace, but he couldn't take my heart. The next morning, I opened a new email account. I didn't respond to him. I didn't acknowledge the threat. I just started fresh. A new phone, a new Telegram ID. I left everything behind, but I knew it wasn't over, because monsters like him don't let go that easily. I thought I had escaped. I thought starting over would be enough, that if I changed my email, my phone, my digital fingerprint, I could finally breathe again. But fear doesn't vanish with a new SIM card. It lingers. It waits for the smallest crack in your armor, and then it slips back in. The first week after I cut contact, I felt something close to relief. I still checked the windows more than I should have. I still hesitated when answering calls from unknown numbers, but there was a quiet I hadn't felt in weeks. It was like waking up from a long, colorless dream. I made lists, things I could control. I cleaned the apartment every day, even the places that didn't need it. I reorganized the kitchen cabinets, sorted baby clothes by size, lit candles even though the smell made me nauseous. I took walks, short ones, just to see other people and remember the world still moved forward. I wanted to believe that part of my life was over, that the worst had happened and I had survived. But one night, just as I was falling asleep, I saw a notification pop up on my laptop. It was subtle, buried beneath system messages and security alerts. A single line from an account I didn't recognize. It wasn't a message. It was a file. I stared at it for minutes before I opened it. A mistake, maybe, but by then, it was already too late. It was a video, not of me. Not directly. It was a screen recording my old Telegram chats, scrolls of our conversation, side by side with wallet screenshots, photos, even a voice note I had once sent, long deleted from my phone. He had archived everything, compiled it, edited it to look like a narrative, a script, and in this version, I wasn't the victim. I was the willing accomplice. That's when I realized this wasn't just blackmail. It was something worse. He was rewriting the truth. He had turned me into the fraudster. I deleted the file, wiped the cache, unplugged the modem. I sat on the floor, breathing in short, sharp gasps, one hand over my mouth to stop from screaming. I thought he was done with me. I thought the scam was over. But now, I understood what this really was. It had never just been about money. It had always been about control. In the following days, the messages returned. This time, they weren't threats. They were promises. He said he had sent the video to 2 email addresses connected to my old job. He named my ex-manager, my old co-worker from the CAF. He said if I didn't cooperate, he'd post it on a crypto forum, tag my new username, expose me. No demand was made yet, but I could feel it coming. The helplessness returned like a sickness. I started sleeping with the lights on. I couldn't look at my phone without my chest tightening. I stopped going on walks. I deleted every app I wasn't using. But still, he found ways to reach me. New email addresses, encrypted links, anonymous file drops. I stopped opening them. But knowing they existed was enough. I considered going to the authorities again. I even looked up lawyers. But every time I drafted a message, I deleted it before sending. I didn't know how to explain any of it without sounding like I had invited it. He hadn't just tricked me. He had documented everything to make it look like I had been complicit. And worst of all, part of me believed him. I started questioning my memories. Was there a moment when I had seemed too eager? When I had said yes too quickly? Had I misunderstood his intentions from the start? Had I imagined the friendship we shared? The laughter? The kindness? I wanted to forget, but the files made it impossible. Every interaction was archived, every mistake magnified. He finally sent a message with a new demand. Access, not money this time. Not crypto. He wanted access to my wallet. My new wallet. I had made one after the scam. Started saving again, bit by bit. A few tokens from airdrops, some staking rewards. Nothing major, but it was mine. It was safe. Until now, he claimed he could help protect it. That if I let him in, he could remove my identity from the files he had created. That he would vanish for good. That no one would ever know what happened. It was a lie. I knew that, but I also knew what it felt like to have people question your integrity. To have your name whispered in circles you couldn't reach. And with a baby on the way, I didn't have time for whispers. So I stalled. I told him I needed time. I sent vague replies, slow and infrequent. I used disposable addresses. I acted compliant while scrambling for help. I reached out to online communities, not with my name, not with details but with questions. I asked about doxing, about blackmail, about legal options. Most people gave generic answers. Some mocked me. A few were kind. One suggested contacting a nonprofit that helps women targeted by digital abuse. I bookmarked the site but didn't contact them. I wasn't ready. What I did instead was build a trap, not for him, for myself, a folder, offline, air-gapped, everything he had sent. Every message, every file, every screenshot. I copied them all, organized them, created timelines, not to confront him, not yet, but to prove to myself that I wasn't crazy, that this happened, that it had a beginning, and maybe, one day, it could have an end. There's a specific kind of silence that lives in fear. It's not empty. It has weight, texture, shape. It presses against your ribs when you breathe and wraps around your thoughts when you try to think clearly. That's the silence I lived in. After he asked for access to my new wallet, every notification made me flinch. Every unknown number made my palms sweat. Every email without a sender name made my vision blur. My life had narrowed down to one goal: avoid triggering him. Stay invisible. Don't poke the monster, but monsters don't need provocation. They knock even when you're quiet. I stopped looking for jobs. I stopped replying to anyone who messaged me. I even stopped reading the forums where I had once asked for help. The few people who had tried to reach me, my sister, a former classmate, even a friendly neighbor, I kept them at a distance. I told myself I was protecting them, but really, I was protecting the version of me I wish still existed. I was eating less, sleeping less. My body was changing, but I wasn't present for any of it. The pregnancy became something that happened to me, not something I embraced. The child growing inside me deserved better. I knew that, and yet I felt powerless to offer anything. The scammer, him, the ghost I never saw, remained persistent. He stopped sending direct threats. Now, his messages were polite, friendly, as if none of it had happened, as if we were still the same people who once laughed at memes and talked about market trends. He complimented my judgment, praised my instincts, said I had a good head for risk, that I just needed a little more guidance. He had shifted again, this time from extortionist to mentor. That was the part that broke something inside me, not the lie, not the manipulation, but the casual way he repainted our entire history, like it was a story we had written together, like I was lucky to have his attention. I started doubting myself all over again. Had I imagined the fear? Had I exaggerated the threat? Maybe I had misunderstood him. Maybe he really had meant to help me all along. Maybe I had overreacted and driven him away. The files he sent, the video, the screenshots had been edited, sure, but was it possible I had said those things? Gaslighting doesn't always come from others. Sometimes it comes from inside you, seeded by doubt and watered by shame. I hit the breaking point 2 nights later. It was almost 3 in the morning. I couldn't sleep. I sat on the floor of the bathroom, hugging my knees. My reflection in the mirror didn't look like someone I recognized. I had aged in weeks. The light had drained from my face. The girl who had once believed in possibilities was gone. I opened my laptop. I read every message he had ever sent, from the first friendly reply in the Telegram group to the last encrypted file. I copied the entire history into a document, not just the threats, all of it, and then I wrote my story beside it, side by side. His lies, my truth. I didn't stop until the sun came up. The room glowed with a faint gold, but I felt no warmth from it, just clarity, just exhaustion. I knew I couldn't go to the police, not yet. I had no solid name, no face, no direct financial transaction tied to the recent harassment. But I could go somewhere. I opened the website I had bookmarked weeks earlier, the nonprofit that helps women targeted by online abuse. I filled out the form. I uploaded what I had. I described the situation. I left out no detail, and then I waited. That day passed like all the others, quiet, heavy, but this time there was a shift. I had done something, not much maybe, but something real. They responded 2 days later. Their reply wasn't dramatic. There were no promises of instant justice, just acknowledgement, a kind message, an offer to speak, an invitation to explain more. When I was ready. It was the first time in months that someone had believed me without question. I didn't cry, not then, but something loosened inside me, a knot I hadn't even realized was there. Still, the messages from him didn't stop. He told me he was being patient, that he understood my hesitation, that if I needed more time, he'd wait. But he reminded me gently that others wouldn't be so kind, that if I didn't take his offer soon, I might lose the protection he was willing to give me. I didn't respond. Instead, I documented it all, he sent another video, a new version. This one made it look like I had recruited other people, that I was part of a larger scheme. It was laughably fake but convincing enough for anyone who didn't know me. I realized what he was building. He wasn't just trying to ruin me. He was creating a narrative, one he could release whenever he wanted, one that made him the victim and me the villain. That was his real currency. Perception, not coins, not tokens, perception, and I had finally understood the price of silence. I had always thought that surviving something meant getting through it, that if you could still stand afterward, still breathe, still eat a meal without crying, you had survived. But I was beginning to understand that survival was something else entirely. It was not a destination. It was a constant daily resistance. The support organization I had contacted didn't promise miracles, but they listened. They helped me feel like my story mattered. They introduced me to people who had gone through similar things, not crypto scams exactly, but digital coercion, blackmail, psychological control. I read their accounts in quiet hours, late into the night. In their stories, I saw reflections of my own, different villains, same trap. One of the women I spoke to described it as being hunted by someone who always knew the rules better than you. Someone who made you believe that the rules didn't apply to them. And she was right. He knew what he was doing. He knew the limits of the law. He knew how to manipulate systems, avoid detection, and frame narratives. But what he didn't know was that I had finally stopped playing along. The first real countermove I made was small. I created a duplicate environment, a digital sandbox where I replicated our entire history, all of the messages, the wallet addresses, the transaction hashes, the metadata. I began matching timestamps, cross-referencing data from Telegram with transaction confirmations on SoulScan. I built a timeline more detailed than even he had likely kept. Each entry had its own page. Each page told part of the story. The person from the organization who was helping me suggested compiling everything into a report, not just as evidence, but as protection. If he ever tried to go public with his narrative, I could release the full truth, painful, personal, undeniable. I had nothing to hide anymore. He had stolen my privacy, but not my story. Meanwhile, his tone was shifting again. He had grown impatient. The friendly tone turned sharp, accusatory. He said I was stalling, that I was choosing to make this harder, that he had given me every opportunity to make things right. I read the messages with a calm detachment I hadn't felt before. I recognized the manipulation now, the way he cloaked control and concern. I didn't respond. I documented. Then, out of nowhere, he tried something new. He posed as someone else. A message arrived from a different email address. A woman, supposedly, who claimed to have been in the same Telegram group as me. She said she had heard rumors that someone was saying I had been part of a scam project, that there were screenshots floating around. She offered to help me clean it up before it got worse. It was him. I didn't need proof. The writing was different, but the rhythm was the same pattern of pressure hidden inside politeness. The same strategy of isolating me by pretending to be the only one with answers. He was trying to come through the side door now. Disguise, roleplay, desperation. That was when I realized he was losing control. People like him thrive on predictability. They need the victim to respond, to panic, to flinch. But I wasn't doing any of those things anymore. I took the new email and added it to the report. I ran metadata extraction on the message headers. I compared time zones, server locations, IP shadows. Nothing exact, but enough to form a shape. Enough to show that all of these messages were connected, all fingers pointing back to the same hand. I sent the report to two places. First, to the nonprofit. They said they could connect me to legal resources, digital forensic experts, and if I chose law enforcement. Second, to myself. An encrypted drive, stored offline, buried under layers of passcodes I couldn't forget even if I wanted to. It was my insurance. And still, he kept trying. He sent me a crypto address with a note saying if I deposited just a fraction of what he claimed I owed, he would delete everything and disappear. No strings attached. He framed it like a peace offering, a gesture of goodwill. Said he didn't want this to get uglier than it had to. I didn't respond. The next message said the clock was ticking. That once certain files were uploaded, there would be no going back. That my name would be forever linked to online financial deception. He said he'd already drafted the threads. They just needed to be posted. That was the final message I received from him. Days passed. Then a week. Nothing surfaced. I waited, breath held, for the explosion. But it never came. There were no Reddit posts, no Twitter threads, no videos, no leaks, no public accusations, just silence, real silence this time. And in that stillness, I realized something. He needed me more than I needed him. He needed me to respond, to panic, to feed his performance. Without that, he had no audience, no power, no flame to burn his story brighter. I was no longer his fuel. The quiet after his last message wasn't peace. It was suspense, a breath held too long, a waiting game I wasn't sure I was winning. But even in the stillness, I felt something change. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like prey. I felt like someone who had survived. The next step wasn't about hiding anymore. It was about seeing him, finding out who he was behind the masks. Not to get revenge, not even to press charges, not yet. But because I needed to know the truth. I needed to see what kind of person could do this so methodically, so intimately, without flinching. The nonprofit put me in touch with a cybersecurity contact. I didn't tell them everything, just enough. Enough for them to understand what I was facing. They guided me through tools and tactics that didn't require hacking, just observation. I wasn't chasing him across the dark web. I was watching the footprints he left behind. Crypto is anonymous, but not invisible. Every transaction, every movement, every wallet address tells a story. I followed the sol I had sent him months ago. It had been moved, split, consolidated, swapped, but the patterns were there. The time of day, the intervals, the exchanges he preferred. He used mixers, sure, but even those left patterns. I couldn't find his name, but I could map his habits, and one habit stood out. Every time he made a withdrawal to a centralized exchange, he used the same one. A small overseas platform that still required minimal KYC verification. Not enough to get a passport photo, but enough to attach metadata to an IP. I compiled the logs. I listed the wallet trails. I wrote a new report this time for illegal. The contact from the organization helped me file a soft inquiry. No formal charges, just a digital preservation request to the exchange, in case I needed it later. It wasn't much, but it was a thread, and that thread was mine to hold now. Outside of the technical work, I focused on building my own narrative again. I started journaling not about the scam, but about everything else. My pregnancy, my hopes, the future I was still trying to believe in. I didn't want his story to be the only one in my life. I needed mine to be louder. The further I moved from his world, the clearer his tactics became. I saw the patterns in other places too, in other scam stories, in forums, in Reddit posts, in quiet warnings from users who had once believed too easily. The emotional manipulation, the grooming, the long con dressed as friendship. It was everywhere, just under the surface. I started writing something for them too, not an expose, not a takedown, a guide, how it started, how it escalated, what I missed, what I did right, what I wished I'd known. I didn't attach my name. I didn't post it yet, but it helped me shape the chaos into something structured, something useful. Meanwhile, I checked the exchange trail every few days, and then, one morning, something changed. One of the wallets linked to the scam made a transaction to a known ENFT platform. A sale, a mint, a small, barely valuable token, but it was tied to a public username, a vanity handle. He had made a mistake. It was a throwaway account, but the handle matched one I had seen before, months earlier, in the Telegram group where it all started. Back when everything was just charts and emojis and inside jokes, I searched that name across old forums, Discord chats, even cached web pages, and there he was. Not him, not fully, not a name, not a photo, but a post from 2 years ago on a Solana fan forum, a young man asking for help setting up a validator node. His writing style matched. The timestamps matched. He had posted a selfie once. Just one, a group shot, blurry, cropped, mostly faces turned away, but one clear image, him, younger. Maybe before the scams, maybe before the lies, but unmistakably him. I saved the image. Not to post, not to share, just to see. To know that he was real. He wasn't a phantom. He wasn't a genius hacker or a nameless virus. He was a man, flesh and bone. Someone who smiled at cameras and looked like any other friend at a party. That broke something open inside me. Not fear, not rage, pity, because for all the power he thought he had chosen to spend his life manipulating strangers from the shadows, playing God in digital rooms, rewriting stories he never earned, and I who had once been silent, frightened, ashamed, I was still here, still writing, still waiting for my baby, still walking through each day. I had lived, he had only performed, and now I had his face. There's a strange calm that follows fear, not the calm of safety, but of certainty. The moment you stop running, the moment you realize there's nothing left to hide from. I had reached that place. I had his face. Not just a handle, not just a digital fingerprint, but the image of the man who had taken my trust and shaped it into a weapon. The man who had haunted my inbox, pretended to care, blackmailed me, tried to erase me, and now he couldn't erase himself. The photo wasn't enough for a conviction. It wasn't even enough to name him publicly, but it was enough for the authorities to take me seriously. With the help of the advocacy team, I updated the legal report. We tied it to the crypto transaction trail, the Telegram chats, the blackmail attempts, and the fake identities he used. A picture was forming not just of a single scam, but of a method, a system, a predator with a pattern. Law enforcement finally opened a case. It was slow, bureaucratic, and cautious. They couldn't promise a prosecution, but they could request data from exchanges, subpoena platform records, flag IPs, and freeze suspicious wallet activity. That was more than I'd ever hoped for. The woman from the nonprofit told me something I never forgot. Justice isn't always a courtroom. Sometimes it's being heard. Sometimes it's just knowing they can't hurt you anymore. I clung to that, but there was still one final choice I had to make: what to do with my story. I had written everything, every detail, the deception, the shame, the manipulation, the collapse. I had rewritten it over and over, trimming the edges, shaping the arc. It wasn't just a personal account anymore. It was a guide, a warning, a map for others walking blindly into the same fire. I could publish it anonymously. I could send it to a journalist. I could do nothing. For days I sat with the decision. I weighed the risks. I thought about my baby, about the future, about the eyes that might judge me if I stepped into the light. But in the end, I pressed send, not to everyone, just to one place. A well-known crypto education blog that had featured scam reports before. They promised anonymity, editorial integrity, and platform reach. I trusted them. The editor responded in less than 24 hours. She said the story was unlike anything they had received, that it was painful, yes, but important, that it would help people, that it already had, and just like that, it was out, not with my name, not with his, but with truth. The post went live under the title, "I thought I was just investing. I didn't know I was the target." Thousands read it, hundreds responded. Some shared similar experiences, stories of slow manipulations, fake relationships, long cons that ended in tears and empty wallets. Others asked questions, thanked the anonymous writer, promised to be more careful, and somewhere I knew he saw it too. Maybe he recognized his own tactics, maybe he even recognized me. I hope he did, because this time, the story wasn't his to tell. It was mine. In the weeks that followed, I slowly reclaimed what I had lost. I rejoined a few trusted online communities, not to invest, not to chase coins, but to connect. I kept my privacy locked, my identity guarded, my guard higher than before, but I no longer lived in fear of being found. I had already been found. I had already survived. My baby arrived in the early hours of a quiet morning. I held them in my arms, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel broken. I felt strong, not because I had beaten him, but because I had endured, and now I could begin again, not with bitterness, but with clarity, not with fear, but with resolve, not with silence, but with voice. Thanks for listening to my story with me. Don't forget to follow the channel and like the video for more scam stories.